Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Chaim Richman here together with Yitzchak Reuven today, the 24th day of the month of Tammuz, 5777. It's the 18th of July, 2017. This Shabbat, Chazak, Chazak, V'nitchazek, be strong, and let us be strengthened. It is the Shabbat in which we will finish reading the book of Numbers with the two last Torah portions together, Matot and Masai. It's also the Sabbath of blessing of the new moon of Menachem Av, the consoling Father, which will be happening on Sunday night and Monday of next week, Rosh Chodesh Av, and the beginning of what is known as the 9 days leading up to the day of Tisha B'Av, the day upon which both temples were destroyed, the day that the spies came back and spoke their evil tale-bearing about the land of Israel. And the temple is very much in the news this week as developments in a developing story have brought the issue of the Temple Mount once again to the world's attention in a remarkable way. You see, it all started when last Friday there was a terrible incident of murder, of terror, in which two policemen serving with the Israel police, who happened to have been Druze policemen, not Jews, were murdered in cold blood by three Arab-Israeli terrorists, meaning, what do I mean by the expression Arab-Israeli? I mean that they were not the so-called Palestinians who live in the so-called administered or occupied territories, but they came from the northern city of al-Faham, which is a major city in the pre-67 borders of Israel, what some people refer to as Israeli Arabs. And these terrorists emerged through the Lion's Gate of the Temple Mount, armed with, I believe, Carl Gustav-style automatic weapons, and they murdered these policemen, and then they ran back onto the Temple Mount. A firefight ensued. They were killed. So, if you didn't hear me right, let me say that again. Armed terrorists with lethal weapons brought those weapons from the Temple Mount, came out of the Temple Mount to the Lion's Gate, those of you who are familiar with the various gates to the Temple Mount, and murdered these two policemen, and then ran back onto the Temple Mount. Well, as Internal Security Minister Erdogan puts it, this certainly crosses every red line possible. I mean, we're talking about weapons that were hidden somehow, still not clear how they were hidden on the Temple Mount. I mean, who was responsible for that? Who oversees security on the Temple Mount? What kind of agents, foreign or otherwise, were complicit in hiding those weapons on the Temple Mount? So this happened last Friday. Sorry, but no Arab-Israeli leaders condemned this killing. They weren't even Jews, the victims, and yet these Arab-Israeli leaders still don't. Those in the Knesset, etc., still haven't condemned it.
Well, actually, no correction there. Actually, King Abdullah of Jordan condemned it, but
he's not an
Arab-Israeli. But his
I'm going to get to that.
Okay, but
I'm talking about the local Arab leadership, etc.
Okay, forget about it.
No, now, Arab leaders internationally have condemned Israel for the security measures that Israel has taken in the wake of this act of terror. I'm going to get to that right now. And we'll begin with Jordan, like Yitzchak says, because Israel and Jordan, as you probably know, have a unique relationship. They have a peace treaty. The unique relationship is anchored by, centered around, and nebulously dictated by Jordan's connection with the Temple Mount. There is a peace treaty that was signed in 1993?
94, I think.
Or 94, which basically states that Jordan is recognized as being as having some sort of traditional role in the custodianship of the Temple Mount, and therefore the Jordanian Waqf, which is the Islamic trust that was given the power by Israel in 1967, their power was reaffirmed then, that they can govern over the daily affairs of the Temple Mount. They are actually employed by Jordan. And Jordan sees its role as its kingdom. The king of Jordan sees himself as being the official custodian, guardian of the Temple Mount. All this, of course, leads us dancing around a phrase that we've been talking about for many, many years, the phrase that everyone needs to know who wants to study the complex issue of the Temple Mount. And that, of course, is the status quo. Status quo means things as they are. And the status quo regarding the Temple Mount is a sacred cow, which is more like an idolatrous golden calf, in my opinion, because it is this very, very big deal where the status quo for all practice and purpose on the Temple Mount means, as Netanyahu has emphasized, Jews and Christians and others are allowed to visit the Temple Mount, but only Muslims are allowed to pray on the Temple Mount. That's what he refers to as the status quo, even though he says that we have total sovereignty over the Temple Mount and that the Temple Mount is ours, it's Jewish, but we just won't exercise our right because we're such fine people and we don't want to irritate the Muslims. Okay, so this thing happened, this unspeakable act of terror, horrible murder. Do you understand this scope and extent of what we're saying, that terrorists kept weapons on the Temple Mount hidden somewhere in one of their so-called holy places, ran off the Temple Mount, opened fire, and ran back on. And it was a Friday. So with God's providence, because it was a Friday, there weren't a lot of tourists on the Temple Mount. There weren't a lot of Jewish would-be worshippers, and there weren't a lot of foreign tourists because the Temple Mount, according to the status quo, was closed to those groups of people on Friday. So a major bloodbath was averted, because if there would have been victims probably that were in plain sight meandering around on the Temple Mount, maybe these killers would have sought them out. In any event, right away, Netanyahu made it very, very clear after this happened that status quo is going to be preserved. Don't worry. We're still going to respect the status quo. In fact, as we go to microphone today, it being Tuesday, my understanding, according to news articles that I've read, is that the king of Saudi Arabia personally intervened on this issue, and that through the United States, Netanyahu promised him, don't worry, the status quo is going to be preserved. And in fact, I think he invited the Saudi leadership to come and pray on the Temple Mount. In the meantime, what's happened? First of all, the whole country is tremendously united, and expresses tremendous indignation and sympathy for the families of these policemen. And in a bold move that bespeaks perhaps an effort towards sovereignty, Netanyahu announced that he's going to be taking special security. First of all, the first thing that they did when this happened was that they closed the Temple Mount for a day, and that earned the ire of many across the world, including Jordan, who were calling Israel's acts reprehensible and criminal because we actually dared to close the Temple Mount. And then Netanyahu says, "Okay, I'm going to be reopening it now in stages." Augmented by new security arrangements. The new security arrangements are magnometers. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I believe it's magnometers, which are sophisticated metal detectors at the gates of the Temple Mount, not all of them. And supposedly, allegedly, they're going to be, once again, resurrecting the concept which they tried to do, some people tried to do a year or 2 years ago and never worked out, concept of security cameras. So what's happened is very remarkable in the past couple of days. That's what we want to tell you about today. What's happened is that the Muslim Waqf is up in arms over the brazen, audacious demand by Israel that Muslim worshippers who come to the Temple Mount should actually undergo a search on their way in to make sure that they're not carrying any weapons. The Muslim leadership, as expressed by the Waqf and as expressed by the PA together, expressed total indignation for this. They say this is absolutely breaking the rules of the status quo and contravening international regulations about this holy place. But you understand that they didn't think that keeping weapons there in the holy places, turning the holy place that they say is holy, I'll show you right away how holy they think it is, right? Because for us it's the only holy place in the world. But they don't seem to think that turning the holy place into a den of murder is a contravention of international law or breaks the status quo. But the implication that those coming to the Temple Mount should have to go through a metal detector like anyone in Israel has to go through when they enter any mall or any public place whatsoever in Israel. And by the way, the Jews and the Christians and those that are considered tourists, right, non-Muslims, who have been visiting the Temple Mount and who have been made to visit the Temple Mount only through one particular gate, the Mughrabi gate, forever, right? We've always gone through a metal detector, okay? So we've always been going through a metal detector because we're very, very dangerous people, of course, because we might have a prayer book on us, although that can't be detected by the metal detector unless it's made out of metal. So we've always been going through the metal detector, but the implication that Israel is now saying, the security apparatus is now saying, no, the Muslim worshippers going to the Temple Mount through their 11 gates that they go through also have to be subjected to this. Why? Muslim leadership is up in arms, fuming with righteous indignation. How dare you imply that we need to show you that we're not out to kill you, that we don't have weapons of destruction on us, that we need to be checked like any person would be anywhere else in going into any public place in Israel or anywhere in the free world for that matter. And so the most absurd theater in the world has been created the past few days, listeners. The theater of the absurd that's been created is that the Muslim leadership, the Waqf, is so angry about this that they have decided to boycott the Temple Mount. Yes, they have decided that they are going to show us a thing or two, and they're not going to come to the Temple Mount, and they are calling on people not to go to the Temple Mount. And the sheikh, the imam, whatever he is, the head honcho of the Muslim Waqf, actually made a statement telling his believers, if you pass through one of those metal detectors to go to the Al-Aqsa to pray, I assure you that your prayer will not be heard. But now today, allegedly, he denies having said that. But in any event, so we've been posting on Facebook, and others have been posting, images that show you these hundreds and hundreds of Muslim worshippers past few days have been staying outside the Temple Mount in the parking lot, and they have been opposing their posteriors towards Mecca in the parking lot. No, instead,
they don't. Their posteriors toward the Temple Mount. They bow toward Mecca.
I'm sorry. Their posterior, of course, their posteriors towards the Holy of Holies. I'm sorry, and they bow towards Mecca, the great moon god. But the point is that they're in a snit. They're in a snit. So they're saying it's a kindergarten. We'll show you. We're not going to acknowledge your claim of sovereignty, and we're not going to subject ourselves to the demeaning test to show that we're not carrying weapons. And so we're not going to come to the Temple Mount. And so what's happened the past couple of days? It's absolutely, well, to put it this way, it smacks of being historic. It has a historic feeling about it, and the intimation is that it could be historic. What's happened the past couple of days is that Jews have been free of the Waqf to go up to the Temple Mount and not be dogged and pursued and observed by the Waqf. And so a lot of Jewish people that have been going to Temple Mount the past few days are very, very excited about this. Have we been allowed to completely pray on the Temple Mount openly? Not exactly. There was one incident where apparently a group of people actually said the Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, in the place where the two police close to the entrance to where the policemen were killed, in memory of the policemen, and the police apparently turned a blind eye. But yet today, that was yesterday or 2 days ago. Yesterday.
That was yesterday.
But yet today, a young Jewish fellow was arrested, removed from the mountain for praying. So, is this going to be a whole new thing, that Jews are now going to be allowed to pray openly because the Waqf is not there watching them? Or the police going to keep this draconian so-called status quo rule in place, that even when there isn't the chance of incitement or the Muslims getting upset because there aren't any there to see them, they're still not going to allow them to pray? So the jury's not in, because while there have been isolated reported incidents of the police being a little bit more lenient, yet today we saw an arrest. So this is where we're at right now. Again, as Yitzchak pointed out, the king of Jordan called Bibi, and apparently he did make some sort of condemnation by saying that these kind of murders are not not helpful, or that he decries all sorts of violence. But at the same time, the parliament of Jordan actually praised the murderers and condemned Israel. And so it goes. That doesn't surprise us.
And so did the Palestinian Authority, and so did the Fatah, a terror group, of which Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, is the head of. And so did Hamas, here. And so did Turkey, and
these were Arab Israeli citizens, generations that we have raised and educated, taxpayers, who receive all the benefits of being Israeli citizens. They came to Jerusalem and committed this act. And who did they kill? They didn't kill Jews. They killed Druzy policemen. And yet, for some reason, this seems to make sense to them. So what's the story going to be now? Are Jews going to be allowed to pray freely on the Temple Mount? Is this the beginning of a new era? They are at this moment, Jews are walking around on the Temple Mount for the first time since apparently 1969 without Waqf accompaniment, but they are still dogged and pursued by the police. They still have police accompaniment. They are still not allowed to break up into smaller groups or bigger groups. They're still not allowed to mingle. They're still being required to identify themselves and to go in the same formation as groups, in the same places, and under the same circumstances of being observed. Some people in the society of those that are enthusiastic about going up to the Temple Mount, some people are looking at this with rose-colored glasses, very excited, thinking maybe this is the beginning of a new era. Maybe this is the beginning of true sovereignty. Maybe this will be this will lead to the ultimate death of the status quo. Because look, Jews are on the Temple Mount now. There's no Waqf. And it just maybe will take a little tiny push to change things. And after all, the Waqf is staying outside with their arms folded, very, very upset. Okay, bye. So you're upset. I'm so sorry, but that's how it goes. And by the way, and I said, we'll see how holy it is. I mean, when we're separated from the Temple Mount, when there are times that we can't go up, whether it's Ramadan or whether there was this or that incident and the police don't allow us, and some of us have personally been banned for very long periods of time, we Jews, we're always so upset. We're so broken. We're so broken-hearted. We feel like we're being separated from a spouse. We feel so totally disconnected when we're not allowed to go to the Temple Mount. But yet, the Muslims who say that it's such a holy place to them, they're so angry about the new security measures that our government wants to place on the Temple Mount that they're refusing to go in. Does that make any sense? I thought it was holy to them. That's the story with the Waqf boycotts of the Temple Mount. Bottom line, in my opinion, is that yes, this could be a tremendous opportunity in history. This could be the beginning of a new era if the Israeli leadership, the government, would take the bull by the horns and say, you know what, this status quo business, it's dead, it's over. It's time for us to declare to the whole world that this is ours, that we're responsible, that we're sovereign. How do you on the one hand say, how do you claim that you're sovereign? You claim it to Saudi Arabia, you claim it to Jordan, you claim it to the United States. You say Israel is the sovereign authority on the Temple Mount, but yet at the same time, you do not allow your own people to open their lips, to move their lips to say Shema Yisrael, to pray there. How do you get away with that? You can't say sovereign. You can't say you're sovereign, but then say, but I'm not going to exercise it. I'm going to let everybody else pray there, but I'm not going to let my own people pray there. So this could be a very, very big change, but that will take a lot of courage and integrity, and most of all, belief in Hashem and belief in the faith in the destiny of the Jewish people. And so what I'm afraid of is that, once again, we may rise to the potential just short of our potential and then fail. Because, after all, the issue was never the Muslim presence. The issue was never the Waqf. The issue is not even the police. The issue is only one thing and one thing only, and we've been talking about this for many years. The issue is that the Prime Minister of Israel alone is the one who decides the policy on the Temple Mount. And until the Prime Minister can shake himself loose from his obsessive and unhealthy commitment to Jordan, I mean, even now, the Waqf is not there, but yet the Prime Minister has not changed the instructions to the police not to allow Jews to pray there. And the Prime Minister has gone out of his way to assure Jordan and Saudi Arabia and everybody, don't worry, the status quo is going to stay in place. Well, tell me something. Who broke the status quo, the Jews or the Muslims? Does the status quo mean that there could be murders also on the Temple Mount? It's time to bust this whole myth of the Temple Mount being important to Islam. It's time to bust it wide open and take it back. And that's what we could do right now. So yes, potentially this could be a very, very great moment in history if our leadership will rise to the occasion.
I'm not holding my breath, Rabbi, simply because I believe it's Netanyahu. He clings to the status quo. He wants peace and quiet. He doesn't want to make a change that could upset the balance. This has always been his MO. He's very cautious. I don't think that he's going to make any change. He's been out of the country. He's been visiting in France and Hungary. And obviously he's given instructions to his ministers to not make any changes. Again, the Waqf is telling the Muslims to stay away. And in the meantime, there have been some riots and some violence.
What are they accomplishing by that, though?
And well, what they're accomplishing is, if you ask me, is they are a lot of individuals, groups, terror groups, and states as well, who are trying to turn this into a conflagration, into a lot of violence. And as long as you keep
I hear the music.
Oh, you're right.
We're going to be right back on Temple Talk. Don't touch that dial. Stay with us. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Chaim Richman here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the 24th day of the month of Tammuz, 5777, the 18th of July, 2017. This coming Shabbat, a double parsha in our Torah reading, which concludes the book of Numbers. Matot Mas'eh is the double reading. And it's also Shabbat Mevarachin, in which we will be blessing the advent of the new moon of Av, which actually begins on Sunday nights, which of course ushers in the, as the Rabbi mentioned earlier, the 9 days of Av, which is the further intensification of the period of reflection, introspection, and signs of mourning for the Holy Temple, which was destroyed on the 9th of Av, both the first Holy Temple and the second Holy Temple, the 9th of Av being the day that the spies returned to the children of Israel in the desert and spoke dibah, spoke evil speech about the land of Israel, and the people were so distressed and distraught that they threw up their arms and sobbed bitterly, and God said, because you've cried for nothing, I'll give you a reason to cry for future generations. Yes, Rabbi?
You know, it's interesting, like, you described the 9 days just now. You said they're a time for introspection, reflection, and then you pause and you said, and signs of mourning. And the interesting thing is, like, people who follow Temple Talk and who follow our work in working towards the rebuilding of the Holy Temple and reinstating Temple consciousness in every way over the past almost 30 years. So they know that that's what we're into. They know that we're into focusing on the temple. But others in the Jewish world focus on the mourning, and it's our opinion, and we've made a series of films about this over the year. We have a new one coming out any day. People are going to be very excited about it, I think. And we've made the Children Are Ready series, and we made a film called Dare to Dream, all emphasizing the fact that, hey, you know, who told you that the emphasis is supposed to be on mourning? The emphasis is supposed to be on rebuilding. So it's funny because you describe, okay, it's introspection, reflection, and signs of mourning. You know, they're not going to hear this from anybody else. They're only going to hear this way of looking at it from us, because everybody else, every Jewish site that you go to, every teacher, they're all talking about how this is a time of mourning, of despair, of anguish, of destruction. But then they put this certain spin on it, but they say, oh, but we can rebuild the temple through our good deeds. You can put a brick in the Holy Temple by acts of baseless love and kindness and all these kind of things, which is all very lovely, because anyway you have to be doing good deeds. And anyway, absolutely we're commanded to love our fellow and to do wonderful acts of charity all the time. But unfortunately, that's not going to build a building. What's going to build a building is the actual building. So you cannot denude the simple interpretation of the commandment in Exodus 25:8 of making the temple into something which is only a metaphor. We don't do that. We're Jews. We're not abstract. So the thing is, by the same token, Yitzchak, you know, like, and you know about the lectures that I've been giving lately and last week and everything. The idea here is that we want people to understand the goal of this period of intense, like you say, reflection and introspection is to rise up from the position of mourning and rebuild, ready to rebuild, get ready to rebuild. Yes, we observe very intense rites of mourning during these 9 days. There are different kihilot, different congregations in Israel according to different traditions. There are the Sephardic traditions that are where the levels of mourning intensify really only during the week in which it falls out, and then there is the Ashkenazi levels of observance of mourning in which these intensities increase from Rosh Chodesh Av. It has to do with not swimming and not listening to music and not bathing for pleasure. And we're already not cutting hair or buying new garments or shaving already since the 17th of Tammuz. And all this is to keep us totally focused on the fact that we are mourners. We are mourners without the Holy Temple. But the goal of the mourning process is to be sick and tired of the mourning and to say, this has got to stop. We have to do something about it. The reason I say all this now, in addition to the fact that it's the eve of the 9th of Av, is because here's a case in point. Case in point is that it's not a coincidence, okay, that during this period of time now, in the 3 weeks of mourning, you know, that all of a sudden all heck broke loose, that this terrible thing happened on the Temple Mount, and now it's once again we are embroiled in the heart of the matter, the bayit, Har HaBayit, the mountain of the house. It's everything. It's the main issue, issue of who we are as a people. All of a sudden, all eyes are focused on this issue, and again we're asking, status quo, not status quo, what is it? Can we pray? Can't we pray? There are no Muslims there. They're all outside in the parking lot with their arms folded and they're in a huff. Oh, I'm so sorry. You don't want to come back? Okay. So then we'll be there where we belong. But again, so here's my point. Are we going to just let this slide into the maw of the oblivion of incompetency once again? Or are we going to say, wow, Hashem loves us so much, he's once again giving us the Temple Mount on a silver platter. It wasn't enough that he did it exactly 50 years ago. in 1967. Now again, he's giving us the Temple Mount, and he's saying, children, I love you. Let's not be angry at each other. Go do it right now. So I'm saying, how do you look at this period of time is what it's all about. And that's why I said they're not going to hear this from anybody else, because everybody else is talking about the 90s. Oy vey, we're mourners. Please, Hashem, come back to us. Please, build a temple, please. Well, guess what? He did already. He says, go for it. So the question is, how do we look at this period of time? Is this like, well, okay, but the world is looking, and we got to keep the status quo going, and we got Jordan, you got Saudi Arabia, you got the United States, you got to get everybody happy. Who do you think we are anyway? Well, of course we're sovereign. Of course we're sovereign, but we're not going to pray there, but we're not going to use it. We're not going to show anybody that we're sovereign. We're just going to be sovereign because we're great. We're such fine people. We just have it in mind that we're sovereign. It's like a mental thing, but we don't really have to act sovereign. Or are we going to say, this is enough of this charade, enough of this self-immolation, enough of this self-flagellation. Let us truly rise up and be the people that we can be. That's what these 3 weeks are all about. And my feeling is that this is like such a divine orchestration of this time and space. And if we don't really feel this motivation now and do something on a national level, again, it's a terrible wasted opportunity. Because it's really a time of opportunity now. That's all I'm saying.
Time of opportunity. Again, I don't see the geula, the redemption, coming from the leadership. I see it coming from the people. And the fact is that the past 2 days, because actually the government reopened the Temple Mount for Muslims on Sunday, but for Jews only on Monday. Again, Muslims murder 2 Israeli policemen, yet they're invited to go back onto the mountain Sunday. Jews have to wait till Monday, but the call for Jews to go up has gone out, and the numbers have been incredible. We're not talking about thousands of Jews who can go up. Again, even though there's no Waqf up there, the hours, limited hours for Jews to be on the Mount during these days are the same limited hours.
And yeah, it's sweet. It's sweet without the Waqf. It's nice. It's like you bat a mosquito off of your hand. It's much nicer that they're not there. But it's very naive to think that everything is going to change 1, 2, 3 because the police still have the same orders in place. Yes, many of them are more sympathetic to us. Yes, many of them will look the other way and say, okay, now you can pray. But the point is, the Prime Minister has to address the issue of who does he serve? Whom does he serve? And what is this whole thing all about? What in the world are we kowtowing to a Jordanian interest for?
And again,
it's the wrong place to show noblesse oblige. It's the wrong place to be a gentleman. But the message that he's broadcasting to Jordan and to the world by being willing to step back from our own sovereignty is the wrong message, and this is precisely it's emblematic of our problematic relation with the Arab world. Is that when they look at us and they see that we do not treat that which is the holiest thing in the world to us the way we should, then they have no respect for us.
It's also emblematic of our problematic relationship with Hashem, because we're not living up to His expectations of us. But again, as we started to say earlier, yes, the Arabs/Muslims are trying to turn this into a reason for war, trying to turn it into violent confrontations, which of course then they expected Israel would have to back down in this and that. There's really nothing to back down on. So they finally implemented, after 50 years, proper security arrangements that include the Arabs, not just the Jews, and not just the Christians, and not just the tourists. And finally, they're going to start to make some order. I mean, Rabbi, you and I have been saying for years that there are probably stockpiles of weapons on the Temple Mount. The police searched, they found very little, but again, there's subterranean tunnels and caves, all sorts of things. I don't believe that the police went into everything. And I'm sure that...
And last week, several members of the Waqf were arrested. First of all, 58 employees of the Waqf were questioned. And I think most of them were released immediately, but several were arrested on suspicion of aiding
these
terrorists. That probably means helping to hide these weapons. What do you think? Are you surprised when we have foreign agents in the heart of Jerusalem, that in the holiest place in the world for the Jewish people, that are dead set on destroying Israel?
So, you asked the question before, are we going to do something about it? Are we going to change our patterns of thought and behavior? Well, that's what you and I have been trying to affect, that kind of change now for many years. And it's taking hold, and people are changing. And the fact is that 99 out of 100 public figures today will say, yes, Jews should have the right to pray in the Temple Mount. Yes, we should employ full sovereignty over the Temple Mount. And again, that one person who's in the position of power to make a change is dead set against making change. I don't think he's going to make any change. He seems to think that there's some kind of strength in being stuck in the same headspace year after year after year, and not letting incident after a week ago. A couple got married in the Temple Mount, which involved putting a ring on somebody's finger. And again, there was this whole thing, ooh, they're going to be so upset, ooh, this is going to be World War III. There wasn't a peep out of the Muslims. Last week, there was a double murder, and Israel closed the Mount, and it was the first time, supposedly, in X amount of years that they couldn't pray this or that in the Temple Mount, the Muslims. It didn't start World War III. Now, 4 days later, elements in the field are trying to stir things up. But again, time after time, we witness that Israel can enforce its sovereignty, and Jews can pray and say things like the Shema and get married, and it's not the end of the world, and the sky doesn't fall in, and everything is fine. Yet we have a very, very timid Prime Minister who doesn't want to say
And I just
boo.
want to put in here, because with all fairness to Bibi, he didn't start the fire. The policy of status quo and the policy of total ambivalence and looking at the Temple Mount like it's an albatross around our neck that we don't know what to do with, that's been the policy of every prime minister in Israel from the time of Levi Eshkol, who was the prime minister at the time of the 1967 victory and liberation and unification of the Temple Mount. So he's one in a chain, but that's in all fairness.
If he did make a change, probably the whole world would be, on top of his case, because.
But you just said that it's not going to cause World War III.
I know.
It hasn't,
I mean the politicians, because Bibi is Bibi, and everybody loves to hate Bibi.
So in all fairness, he didn't start this. But I'll also point out that things have gotten, I think, considerably worse under his cadencia. In that he has deepened this perverse kind of commitment to Jordan, and he's taken every opportunity to emphasize that his tremendous reverence for the status quo, and so for some time now, let's say for the past few years, we've been of the opinion that basically things have never been worse in terms of Jewish rights on the Temple Mount. Recently, though, in the past 6 months, we have felt a very marked improvement in the police's attitude towards the Jews and towards their desire to worship, if not allowing them to worship, which they can't do because Bibi doesn't let them, still in their empathy, in their respect. But those improvements that we feel, we also feel have nothing to do with Netanyahu. They might be in spite of Netanyahu. They have everything to do with the Minister of Internal Security, with the new Chief of Police, and a desire by the top brass of the police to really change and understand the motivation of the Jews and stop treating them like they're the enemy. And that is very, very much appreciated and very, very much welcomed. But it's got nothing to do with Netanyahu, because Netanyahu himself is totally impotent when it comes to the Temple Mount.
Also, Avi Dichter, a Knesset member today, was formerly the head
He was formerly the head of the Shabak, of the General Security
Internal
Service.
Security here in Israel.
So he's actually one of the country's leading security experts.
And he has been very vocal and spoke again yesterday, saying that he said something like the era of the Waqf calling the shots on the Temple Mount is over, and Israel has reimposed its sovereignty, and that's the way it's going to be. And
because of the metal detectors,
right? Because of the metal detectors. But he's been very outspoken, and I'm pointing that out because, like you said, he is an expert in security. Right. He doesn't seem to think that imposing Israeli sovereignty, and he has even said in the past, freedom of prayer, freedom of religion on the Temple Mount, is in any way create some kind of danger for Israel.
Okay, so to his credit, Avi Dichter, he has also openly called in the past for allowing Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, and he, coming from his expertise and from his seniority in the security establishment, seems to be saying no. From what I understand of the security assessment, it's not going to cause World War III. However, once again, here you just made a statement. You just quoted him yesterday as saying that the era of the Waqf is over, and that now, what did you say about Israel's security?
Israel's sovereignty will be reinstated and reaffirmed.
Okay, but I ask you, or I ask Avi Dichter, what do you mean by that? You mean because we've now installed magnetometers, that's what you mean, that Israel is now sovereign, that's an expression of our sovereignty, and so the Muslims can boycott it and be upset, but no, by golly, they're going to have to walk through metal detectors, and that's our sovereignty. No, in my opinion, that's not how Israel should be expressing its sovereignty. Israel should be expressing its sovereignty by allowing Jews to pray.
Absolutely. And he has said that in the past as well. I'm just saying that the opinion that Bibi has that sticking to the status quo is the only way forward is not shared by security experts, even though Avi Dichter happens to be a member of the same political party as Bibi. All this just brings to me the verses in this week's Torah reading, which Rabbi, you have them in English in front of you. I have them in Hebrew. From
well, now it's a double reading. Which portion do you mean?
From Numbers 55. Numbers 33:55.
Okay, so that's
in which it says, "V'im lo torishu et yoshvei haaretz mipnechem, v'haya asher totiru mehem lisikim be'einechem u'litzninim bitztechem, v'tzaru etchem ala haaretz asher atem yoshvim va."
Okay, this is an extremely politically incorrect verse for the Creator, the Master of the Universe, God Almighty, to have said. But I'm not his spokesman or his censor, so I'll just be brazen enough to read it.
I'm just going to quote God.
I'm just going to quote God now, not Avi Dichter, not Netanyahu, God. Numbers 33, verse 55. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, those of them whom you leave shall be pins in your eyes and a surrounding barrier of thorns in your sides, and they will harass you upon the land in which you dwell. And it shall be that what I had meant to do to them, I shall do to you. Ouch.
Yeah, ouch. But that pretty much is the headline for what's happening right now. Describes it. I mean, you may say, "Ooh, that's not nice," and God must be a Republican or something. But no, this is what it says in our holy book.
I think he's an independent.
We just quoted him. That's all.
I gotta say, this crescendo ending of the Book of Numbers is to me so beautiful and so intricately woven. Matot, beginning with the power of words, the whole concept of vows and oaths, and what it means to say something, and what it means to mean it, what it means to make a promise and mean it. There's something that is, we could talk about that a lot as far as politicians are concerned. Yes. Saying something and standing up to it and meaning it. The whole concept of the battle against Midian and how Hashem told Moshe that he has to now take vengeance for the children of Israel against the Midianites, and afterwards you will be gathered unto your people. And then right away Moshe goes with gusto and zeal to lead this campaign, even though he knows that it will be the precedent to his demise. And the request of Reuven and God that we've spoken about, we need to speak about more. And then Parshat Masay, the whole listing of the 42 encampments from where to where is so deep. The places that we have to go through in order to come home, the things that we have to go through, all of us in this world, in order to eventually come into the inheritance. And you know what? Just this idea of Hashem speaking to Moshe in the beginning of chapter 34 and telling him, tell the children of Israel, command them, these are going to be the boundaries of the land. And this is so timely and so amazing. The whole idea of the relevancy of the land of Israel, the boundaries of the land, the cities of the Levites, the refuge cities, and all of this on the backdrop of what we are going through now as a people, as a nation, and these birth pangs of true sovereignty on the Temple Mount, which will lead to the ultimate rebuilding of the Holy Temple during these very days of introspection and reflection, aka mourning, but mourning that's purposeful and focused, not crocodile tears like we spoke about last week, but real tears, tears of resolve. And so, yes, may this turn into a time when not only are we not accompanied by the Waqf on the Temple Mount, but we are able to express our total commitment and service to the God of Israel by open prayer on the Temple Mount. And it seems to me right now, at this particular moment in time and space and history, that is a decision that could be made by our government.
It could be made and implemented, and again, when our government is strong and stands up for our rights here in the land, the people around us respect that. They respect our commitment when we show our commitment. Here is the music. Thank you so much for being with us this week. We'll be back next week. Temple Talk.